Good morning. I'm Dr. Suraiya Shahin and today I will deal I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered this speech I Have a Dream on 20th August 1963 at the March on Washington to fight for freedom. I Have a Dream is a very powerful and consciousness raising speech by Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on 15th of January 1929 in Georgia, US. He was a Baptist minister and social activist who led the American Civil Rights Movement, which started in the mid 1950s. The root cause of this movement was to fight against slavery, enslaved Africans, and their descendants to resist racial oppression. This movement wanted to abolish the institution of slavery and racial segregation. The civil rights movements led by Martin Luther King Jr. from the mid 1950s and continued until his death by assassination, murder in 1968. His major role in this movement remained successful with ending the legal segregation of African Americans in the South and other parts of the United States. What is racial segregation that Martin Luther King Jr. fought against it? Racial segregation is the practice of discriminating people on the basis of their race. As in America, African people experienced the racial segregation at the hands of the powerful American people. How in America, the people of color were marginalized, given second class status, separating their institutions, that is, schools, churches, restaurants, and all the official places, considering themselves politically dominant and superior class of people. Now, who are called African Americans or Afro Americans? African Americans or Afro Americans are mainly of African ancestry. They are the descendants of enslaved people who were brought from their African homelands by force to work in America. But here in America, the Africans found that their rights were severely limited, and for a long time they were denied a rightful share in the social, economic, and political progress of the United States. The Afro Americans were called Negro, which means black. The Afro Americans were called Negro, which means black. In this speech, I Have a Dream, Martin Luther King Jr. focuses on the color discrimination, economic discrimination, and social discrimination that the Negroes, means Afro-Americans, suffered at his time in America. As we know that Negroes were humiliated, discriminated at the hands of Americans. Martin Luther King Jr. in this speech also reminds the Americans of the commitment of Lincoln, that Lincoln advocated the belief of equality. Martin Luther King Jr. observes that even though the Emancipation Proclamation was written 10 years ago in front of the Lincoln Memorial, black people remain far from true freedom. They are being deprived from getting the same advantages or equal status like other Americans. Being the leading figure of this march, he said that this march is intended to highlight these realities. The goal of this march was to cash the check promised to black people and fulfill a promise made by the US government and the founding fathers, who stated that all men are made equal. in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Negroes are included in the category of all men. Yet, America didn't fulfill its promise. In the speech, I Have a Dream, Martin Luther King Jr. spoke. And so, even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold this truth to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state of sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my four little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day, right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted and every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope, and this is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this hope, we will be able to transform the jangling discourse of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. So this was his speech. Martin Luther King Jr. he followed non-violent resistance. Martin Luther King Jr. suggests all the participants of this march that the path to freedom should not be paved with resentment, anger, or improper conduct or violence. Since it was one of the largest human rights rallies in American history, the king extolled the weapon of nonviolent action which can help them to bring changes. He further said, "No one can march alone, hence, black people must march alongside white people. All must be determined to keep going forward as they move forward." Many people will ponder whether those marched will ever be content. No, they will not be content, they will not be satisfied if black males continue to suffer at the hands of the police. Segregation continues and black people are denied the right to vote and other social equality. The protesters will not be satisfied until righteousness and fairness permeate the country. Then the king shifts his focus on the brutality that meted out to his people. He motivates them by saying that many people have been persecuted, murdered, and subjected to police violence, but it doesn't mean that they should lose the heart and hope. He inspires them that surely the pain and suffering will bring a new change. He believes that eventually America will uphold the founder's claim that all men are created equal. He has a hope that one day black and white people will sit together to dine together. He has a strong hope that one day black people will not be judged by the color of their skin but by the content of their character. He believes that one day all the discrimination, injustice, and inequality will come to an end, and we will sing the classic African American hymn that is free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last. Martin Luther King Jr. succeeded in that march, but he was assassinated in 1968, and he was also awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. Thank you.